The air was cold, the kind of biting chill that seeps through wool and skin and clings to your bones. In the village of Alderwyn, nestled between frosted hills and forgotten forests, the winter nights were a kind of quiet torment, but they were used to it. They had to be. No one in Alderwyn expected comfort. They expected survival. And that night, as the wind howled through the narrow alleys of thatch-roofed homes, young Bram, no more than 12, wrapped himself in the same patchwork blanket his grandfather once used when tending fields during the Great Freeze. It smelled of smoke and old hay and something he couldn't quite name, a smell of time. His mother Elswith sat near the hearth, where the fire was more smoke than flame. The logs had been soaked from last week's sleet, and the fire hissed in protest. She hummed an old song under her breath, one that no one remembered the words to anymore. Just the tune-like muscle memory passed down generations. Bram watched her silhouette flicker against the orange glow. His stomach grumbled, but he said nothing. Everyone was hungry. Speaking, it made no difference. "Go on now," Elswith said softly. "Pull your feet in. If we sleep close, we'll steal some warmth from each other." Bram curled up tighter, his sister Hilda already snoring beside him. Outside, the dogs barked at nothing, or maybe something. In Alderwyn, you never knew. There were stories of spirits walking when the snow lay undisturbed and the moon was high. But Bram wasn't afraid. Not really. Fear was for summer, when the harvest failed or raiders crossed the hills. Winter was just pain you grew familiar with, like hunger, like silence. The next morning would mean frozen boots, numb fingers, and another desperate hunt for kindling. But for now, wrapped in fading warmth and shadowed lullabies, Bram drifted into sleep one breath at a time. And in that breath, that pause between dreams and dawn, began the story of survival. Not just for him, but for all the nameless peasants history tried to forget. When morning came, it did not come with sunshine, but with the cracking sound of ice shifting on the eaves and the distant groan of tree branches surrendering to frost. The small window in the cottage glowed pale grey, a colour that promised nothing. Bram blinked against the cold air kissing his face. His nose was numb. The tip of it, in fact, had gone white sometime in the night. Up came the croaky voice of his grandfather Aldrich. The old man hadn't slept. He rarely did in winter. His joints kept him from lying still for too long. Aldrich stood at the doorway, bundled in layers of linen and leather, holding a crude staff for support. Bram sat up, teeth already chattering. Hilda was still curled tight under the blanket, her cheeks red from the cold. Elswith was stirring ashes in the hearth, looking for coals to coax into flame. The silence of the morning wasn't peace. It was anticipation. Hunger had that effect. Aldrich handed Bram a small cloth bundle. Inside was a crust of barley bread, hard as stone. Bram chewed slowly. He wanted it to last. "Kindling first," Aldrich grunted. "Then the pit needs breaking," the well Bram asked. His grandfather nodded, frozen over. Again. Outside the world was dusted white, the kind of snow that looked soft from a distance, but was crusted like old sugar, brittle and cold. Bram's boots were stiff, and each step cracked the icy surface underfoot. Chickens clucked miserably in the coop, too cold to peck. The fields lay dead, just jagged rows of frozen dirt where turnips had once fought to grow. By mid-morning, Bram had gathered what dry twigs he could from beneath the old ash tree and broken the ice atop the well with a rusted axe. His fingers were red, but he felt proud. There was a rhythm to the misery of winter. You either matched it or it swallowed you whole. Later, he joined his mother in the cottage. She was boiling a broth made from dried herbs and onion skins. It smelled like effort. Aldrich sat in the corner, sharpening a blade that hadn't seen good iron in years. That evening, the villagers gathered in the hall. Not for celebration, there was nothing to celebrate but for warmth. They brought whatever could burn, broken stools, a cartwheel, even splinters of an old fence. Around the fire, stories were shared, not for joy, but for remembering. One woman spoke of the wolf winter, when the river froze so deep You could walk to the abbey barefoot. Another man swore he saw lights in the forest last night, blue flickers like lanterns, but moving too fast, too strange. People shuddered and nodded. No one laughed. Superstition was fuel in times like these. Bram listened. He memorized the stories. He wanted to remember everything, because memory in a world like Alderwin's was as much armor as it was inheritance. That night, as he lay down again on the cold floor, he whispered to his sister, "Tomorrow, I'll go to the ridge. Maybe you'll find some dry bark there." Hilda, half asleep, mumbled, "And maybe a wolf will eat you." Bram grinned in the dark. Better than starving. The wind answered with a low moan across the roof, like an ancient voice agreeing with the boy. Bram rose early before the frost had softened, before the chickens had stirred. His breath steamed as he tied the wool scarf around his neck, knotted his cloak, and took his small hatchet from its resting place near the door. Elswith watched him quietly. She didn't stop him. In Alderwin, if a child wanted to help you, let them. The ridge lay to the east beyond the last row of wilted trees and the old stone marker with runes no one could read. It was a strange place. Stories said it was cursed that once a woman leapt from the highest ledge to avoid capture by raiders. Others whispered that the ground there never thawed. Bram didn't believe in ghosts, but he did believe in dry wood, and if there was a chance that the wind-blasted ridge held even a single fallen branch untouched by snow, he'd risk it. It took him half the morning to reach it, his boots crunching over snow and brittle roots. The wind picked up as he climbed, whistling through the pines like a song half remembered. But there it was, near the topper clutch of birch limbs sheltered by a rock overhang. He dropped to his knees, hatchet in hand, working quickly. His fingers stung, then burned, then went numb. He barely noticed. He was gathering life after all wood meant fire, and fire meant warmth. Warmth meant maybe one less cough for Hilda, maybe one less night watching Elswith shiver. Then he heard it. A crunch. Not his. Bram froze. Slowly, he turned his head and saw a figure standing 20 feet away. A man tall and ragged, with a beard like tangled moss, and a cloak far too fine for the likes of Alderwin. He held no weapon, only a walking stick, but his eyes, they burned, not with malice, with something stranger. Hunger, desperation. "You're not from here," Bram said, voice steadier than he felt. The man smiled, revealing teeth like polished bone. "Neither are you. Not truly. Alderwin is a prison boy. You just don't know it yet." Bram stood wood bundled under one arm, hatchet clenched in the other. "You're cold," the man continued, "and hungry. You have questions. I have answers. But not here. Why are you on the ridge? Because this is where the old world breathes still. Beneath the stone. Beneath your feet." Bram didn't understand, and that scared him more than the man's presence. "I should go," Bram said. The man nodded. "Then go. But when your dreams start speaking, when you wake with ash on your tongue, and the wind whispers your name, you'll know I was real." Bram backed away, not turning until the man was a blur in the corner of his vision. He didn't run, but his feet moved faster than they ever had down the ridge. By the time he returned, the sun was beginning its slow fall behind the hills. Elswith saw his face and said nothing, only placed a hand on his shoulder. The wood he brought crackled heartily in the hearth. Hilda clapped her hands with joy, but Bram's mind stayed on the stranger and the words he spoke. That night, his dreams were not his own. That night, Bram's dreams came thick and strange. He stood in the forest, no snow, no cold, only ash falling like soft black rain. The trees loomed tall, their bark peeled and bleeding sap as red as wine. The ground beneath his feet pulsed warm and alive, as if the earth itself were breathing. In the distance, a door stood tall, ancient, forged of blackened stone, half buried in roots and mist. Bram stepped toward it, though he did not know why. He was barefoot now, yet the ash did not burn. The door called to him not with sound, but with memory. His hands reached for the cold metal handles, and just as he touched them, he awoke with a gasp. The cottage was dark. The fire had died, leaving only red embers glowing like watching eyes. Hilda slept beside him, curled like a mouse. Across the room, Aldrich murmured something in his sleep, a name Bram didn't recognize. Elswith sat upright near the hearth with her eyes open. "You felt it too," she whispered. Bram blinked. "What?" the dream, she said. "The ash. The door." A shiver passed through him. "How did you? I dreamt it when I was a girl," she said, voice low. "And again when you were born. And tonight." Bram sat up. "What is it?" Elswith looked at the dying coals. A warning. Outside, the wind groaned like a wounded beast. The village, so used to its own suffering, seemed to huddle tighter in the dark. Bram couldn't sleep again. Not with that dream thick in his memory and his mother's words hanging like frost in the air. The next day dawned heavy with grey clouds and silence. No birds, no sound but the creak of trees and the distant crack of ice on the river. Bram didn't tell Aldrich about the dream, but he saw the way his grandfather looked at him like he already knew. In the village square, a gathering formed. Old Marek, the cobbler, had died in his sleep. His wife swore he had ashes in his mouth when she found him. Whispers spread like plague. Some blamed the cold, others the stranger. What stranger? Someone asked. The one on the ridge said a woman with a wrapped hand, a man in fine cloak, eyes like fire. Gerdrich saw him too. Gerdrich, the miller's son, stepped forward. "He asked me my name," he muttered. "Said I'd forget it soon enough." The villagers murmured. Fear now had a shape, and it wore human form. Aldrich pulled Bram aside. "You saw him too?" Bram nodded. "You spoke?" "Yes." He knew things. Said Alderwyn was a prison. Aldrich's face went pale. "Then it's begun." "What's begun?" The old man looked toward the forest. The unbinding. That afternoon, Bram wandered to the old chapel, half crumbling, its steeple long fallen. He wasn't drawn by faith. No one in Alderwyn believed much anymore. But the place had silence, and silence had become his friend. Inside, the stone floor was cracked, and moss grew thick along the pews. A crow sat on the altar, watching him without fear. Bram stepped forward, his boots echoing in the hollow ruin. Etched in the wall above the altar was a symbol circle, with a gate in its center. It was the same gate from his dream. He reached out to touch it. The stone felt warm. "You've seen it too." Bram spun around. A girl, no older than him, stood by the doorway. Her hair was black as pitch, her skin pale. He hadn't heard her enter. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Lyra," she said. "My family came from the south, but the plague took them. I live near the woods now. You saw the gate." She nodded, and the ash, and the voice that whispers behind it. Bram hesitated. "Do you know what it means?" She shrugged. "I think we're waking up, all of us, slowly. And the world's not what they told us it was." They sat together on a broken bench, neither speaking for a time. Finally, Bram said, "My mother dreamt it too. So did my grandfather." Lyra's eyes darkened, then his closed. Over the next few days, strange things crept into their lives like fog through cracks. Chickens laid blood-specked eggs. A child began speaking in an ancient tongue no one taught him. Frost formed patterns on windows, always circles, always gates. The village dogs refused to go near the forest edge, and every night Bram dreamt again. Of the ash, of the door, of something behind it pacing in the dark. He told Lyra. She told him of voices she'd heard beneath the earth. They agreed to return to the ridge together. "We'll find the stone marker," she said. "And beyond it there's something older than the village, something buried." Bram felt fear, but he also felt a pull like gravity, but deeper. That night, as the snow fell silent and thick, Bram stared out the window while his family slept. The village was changing, or perhaps it was waking, and so was he. The sky was the color of bruised iron, thick with snow that had not yet fallen. Bram stood outside the chapel ruins, with Lyra, a satchel on his back, and a dull knife on his belt. She carried nothing but a lantern and something else, certainty. It clung to her like a second skin, quiet and unsettling. "I found the stone," she said. They walked beyond the edge of the forest, where the pines gave way to birch, and the wind moved with a whispering rhythm like chanting. Lyra led him to a small clearing ringed by frostbitten ferns. At the center stood a slab of black stone, half buried and covered in runes. It was taller once, Lyra said, brushing snow off its face. But time sinks things. Bram knelt beside it. The runes were deep carved not with tools, but burned as if seared by flame or magic. One symbol repeated over and over: the gate, the circle, the two hands beneath it. "What's beneath it?" he asked. An entrance, to where she looked at him, to everything. Together they dug. The ground was frozen, brittle as glass in some places. They used flat stones and broken branches. After an hour, Bram's hands were raw. Then they hit something wood, a frame, a hatch. It took both of them to pry it open. The smell that rose was ancient mold rust and something sweeter: decay. Below was a staircase carved into the earth. It spiraled downward, lit only by the pale glow of Lyra's lantern. "You don't have to come," she said. "I do," Bram replied. They descended into silence. The stone walls were wet. Strange carvings snaked along the side symbols, older than runes, almost like veins. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a cavern. And there, in the center, was the gate. It wasn't stone. It wasn't metal. It was something in between, like forged shadow. Tall rounded surface shimmered faintly like heat over coals. Bram stepped closer. "This is it." Lyra nodded. "It's asleep. What wakes it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward and placed her palm on the surface. It pulsed. A sound filled the cavern low, thrumming like a heartbeat amplified. The air thickened. Bram staggered back. The gate remained closed, but something had changed. He could feel it. Behind them, a whisper. They turned. A figure stood in the tunnel's mouth, cloaked, eyes glowing faint amber. "You should not be here," it said. Bram instinctively placed himself in front of Lyra. "We didn't come to open it," she said quickly. The figure stepped forward. "Then why come at all to understand?" Bram replied. "To remember what they made us forget." The figure tilted its head. "A dangerous wish. I don't care." Silence. Then the figure lifted his hand and tossed a small pouch onto the floor. It landed with a metallic clink. "Take it," he said. "You'll need it for what's coming." Bram picked it up. Inside were shards of something that looked like crystal but burned cold. The figure vanished into shadow. They climbed back up in silence. When they emerged, snow had begun to fall, slow and heavy. "We found it," Lyra whispered, "and now it knows we're here." Bram looked at the forest. In the distance, the village bell rang 3 times. That bell only rang for one thing: war. The bell tolled again. Once, twice. Then silence. A heavy silence, not of peace, but of breath held. Bram and Lyra ran. By the time they reached the ridge's tree line, the snow was thick enough to cling to their cloaks, but not enough to hide the view below. Alderwin glowed in the dusk torchlight, scattering through the snow like sparks in a storm. Figures were moving villagers assembling. Bram could see Aldrich in the square holding a spear he hadn't touched in years. "What could it be?" Lyra asked. "Raiders. No one raids us," Bram muttered. "There's nothing to take." They descended fast, slipping on the icy slopes. Bram's legs burned by the time they reached the outer fence. As they pushed through the front gate, a shout called his name. Bram, it was his mother. Her face was pale, hands tight around a cleaver. "What's happening?" he asked. "Something came out of the forest," she whispered. "Something not right." They turned as Marek's widow screamed from her doorstep. At the edge of the square, a figure stood, not cloaked like the stranger, not shadowed. This one was bare-chested, gaunt, with black veins crawling across his pale skin. His eyes were lidless and glossy. Bram felt his stomach twist. "It's Marek," someone gasped, but Marek was dead. Bram had helped carry his body. The thing that was Marek opened its mouth and ash spilled from it. Then it lunged. Chaos broke loose. Screams, metal clashing. Aldrich bellowing orders. Lyra grabbed Bram's hand and dragged him into an alley. "They're rising," she said, breath ragged. "Whatever was beneath that gate, it's spreading. Then we need to close it." It wasn't open. Bram's mind raced. The pouch, the crystal shards. They were keys, he whispered, not just tokens. Another shriek. Another body. This time Gerdrick's father staggered from the forest edge, his limbs twitching unnaturally. "We can't fight them," Bram said. "Not like this." "Then we don't fight," Lyra said. "We escape." But Bram looked back. His mother, Aldrich, Hilda. The people of Alderwyn. Even if the village had been a prison, it was theirs. "We fight smart." They returned to Aldrich. He was wounded but still standing. "These are husks," he growled. "Emptied men, spirits forced in." "You knew this could happen," Bram accused. "I feared it. I prayed it wouldn't. Then help me stop it." Aldrich nodded. The village regrouped. A barricade formed around the chapel. The eldest few left gathered in whispers. The villagers were terrified, but something in Bram's voice and Lyra's resolve held them together. The next day, they buried 2 more. Fires burned at the edge of the forest. Snow blackened with soot. That night, the dreams returned. This time, Bram saw not the gate but beyond it. A vast plain of ash and red sky. Figures moved the regions made of smoke and bone. And something else, watching him. He woke screaming. Lyra was there. So was Aldrich. "You saw beyond," Aldrich said. "It knows me," Bram whispered. "Then you have to finish what you started." "What does that mean?" "It means you and Lyra must return to the gate. It will open soon whether you want it to or not." Bram looked at his blistered hands. "I'm just a boy." "No," said Lyra. "You're the memory of something old, and so am I." They packed before dawn. Ellsworth kissed his forehead and gave him her father's hunting knife. Hilda gave him a rock from the stream. "For luck," she said. As they walked back into the woods, Bram felt the village shrink behind him. Alderwyn was no longer just a place. It was a line. Behind it was life. Before it, something else entirely. And in the distance, as the snow began to fall again, the gate pulsed. Snow thickened as Bram and Lyra pushed deeper into the forest. Trees loomed overhead like ancient watchers, branches heavy with ice. Neither spoke. Their breath came in bursts of mist, hearts pounding not just from exertion, but from the weight of what they were returning to. The gate. By the time they reached the clearing, the black stone slab was gone buried again, under a smooth layer of snow. But they didn't need to dig. The hatch had already been opened. Someone or something had entered before them. They descended slowly. The steps were slick. The torch Lyra carried fluttered against unseen gusts of wind. Bram's fingers grazed the cavern walls, finding new mark scratches, not carvings. Desperate. At the bottom, the gate shimmered more fiercely than before. Its surface pulsed with dull red light, rhythmic like breath. Bram felt a deep vibration in his chest, as though the thing behind the gate was calling his name. They weren't alone. 2 figures stood near the base of the gate, unmoving, their backs turned, faces unseen. "Wait," Lyra whispered, reaching for Bram's arm. But it was too late. One of the figures turned. It was Bram's father. Bram froze. The face was the same, creased with the years, eyes brown and solemn. But the expression was wrong. Too calm, too still. "Hello, son." "That's not him," Lyra hissed. "I remember this voice," Bram said, dazed. "No, you remember grief. That thing wears your memory like a coat." The figure stepped forward. "You shouldn't have come back." Bram gripped the hunting knife at his side. "We never buried you." "No," the figure said, "because I never left." The second figure turned. Then it was a child, a mirror of Hilda, but with hollow eyes, empty sockets where life should be. The gate pulsed again stronger, and the 2 figures melted, dissolved into ash and silence. The air shifted. From the gate came a whisper, not words, but understanding. It was waiting, not for a key, not for force, but for choice. "It's testing us," Lyra said, "showing us what it can take." Bram stepped forward. "I'm not afraid of it." "You should be." I am, but I'm here anyway. He reached into his satchel and pulled out the pouch of crystal shards. They shimmered blue in the gate's glow. Lyra added hers to slender fragments cold to the touch. Place them, she said. There were indentations near the base of the gate shaped like the shards. Bram pressed his in. It vanished with a faint hum. Lyra followed. The gate sighed, a long, ancient exhale. Then it cracked. A jagged line split the surface. Light spilled through dim at first, then blinding. The gate didn't open outward or inward. It unfolded like a blooming flower petal by petal, until there was only brilliance. Inside the light stood something tall and robed in shadow. Not a figure, not a god, not a demon. Something in between. It didn't speak aloud, but Bram heard it. You are the blood of memory. You are the wound that remembers. Who are you, Bram thought, not knowing how the words escaped. The first forgotten. The last to be buried. I remember the world that was. Behind him, Lyra stumbled. Blood trickled from her nose. Don't listen too long, she gasped. It burns truth into lies. Bram closed his eyes. What do you want? Only to be chosen? Only to return? No. The light flickered. I won't let you take this world again. Then let it fall. And with that, the gate slammed shut. Bram was thrown backward, landing hard. Lyra crawled to him. Above them, the cavern shook. Dust rained down. Stones cracked. We need to run, she said. They scrambled up the staircase as the ground groaned. Roots tore from the walls, the air filled with the scent of rot and fire. Just as they reached the top, the entrance collapsed behind them. Snow fell softly again. They lay there gasping under the pale sky. It's not over, Bram whispered. No, said Lyra, eyes fixed on the tree line. For in the woods torches now flickered, dozens of them. And the people who carried them were not from Alderwyn. The forest was no longer silent. Bram and Lyra crouched low beneath a snow-laden fir, watching the line of firelight move toward Alderwyn. The newcomers weren't like the reanimated husks or spirit-bound villagers. These were alive faces, veiled cloaks, tattered but eyes sharp and wary. They're not soldiers, Lyra whispered. They moved like hunters. Bram nodded, though his thoughts twisted. Not from any clan I know. As the figures passed, Bram caught a symbol embroidered in ash-grey thread. A burning tree split down the middle. It sparked something faint in his memory stories. Ellsworth told warnings about distant cults who walked to a fire met stone. They're firewalkers, he murmured. Lyra stiffened. They were supposed to be wiped out a generation ago. They weren't. The firewalkers passed into the village perimeter. Bram and Lyra followed, keeping to shadows. As they approached the main square, the faint hum of chanting met their ears. A low, rhythmic drone that didn't use words. The villagers stood still, mesmerized. Even Aldrich was among them, weapon lowered, face blank. The tallest of the newcomers stepped forward. Her hair was snow white, coiled into braids that reached her waist. Her hands glowed faintly with amber fire. Children of Ash, she called out. We are not your end. We are your purpose. Bram's skin crawled. Lyra whispered, she's not speaking to the villagers. No, she's speaking to what's inside them. Suddenly, Hilda turned. Her eyes glowed faint red. She stepped forward. Mother Bram lurched forward, but Lyra held him back. Don't. Not yet. The white-haired woman approached Hilda, placing 2 fingers on her forehead. This one, remember, she said. The child of the one who ran. With a gesture, she released her touch, and Hilda collapsed. The villagers gasped, their trance broken. Aldrich staggered back, blinking. Well, what happened, he groaned. The firewalkers made no move to threaten. Instead, the tall woman raised her arms. The gate called to us, but it is not yet open. You have held it shut. This is commendable and foolish. Bram stepped into the square. You're not welcome here. The woman's eyes locked with his. You opened the gate's edge. You heard it speak. We only came to witness the one chosen by the wound. The wound, Bram asked. The scar left on this world when the old light was shattered. Lyra stepped forward. You want to unleash it again? No, the woman replied. We want to become it. Murmurs spread among the villagers. Bram lifted his voice. These people came to steal your minds. You felt it, the dreams, the ash, the things that wear the faces of the dead. The villagers recoiled. Aldrich readied his spear again. Enough of this sorcery. The firewalker smiled. It's already begun. Your pain is your offering. Your grief is our passage. Without another word, she vanished, into flame. The others followed, dissolving in sparks. In their place, only scorched earth. That night, the village was quiet. Hilda slept but didn't wake. The elders debated burning the square. Bram and Lyra sat near the stream, cold water rushing beneath thin ice. She knew, my mother Bram said. They know everything, buried Lyra said. Because they came from beneath. Then we need to go where they came from. You mean deeper than the gate? He nodded. There's more. Something even that ancient shadow fears. Lyra looked out over the hills. Then we don't return. Not until we know. In the morning they left Alderwyn again. Not just to survive, but to descend beyond the known world. Into the roots of forgotten fire. But the gate was not the beginning. It was only the doorframe. The path southward wound through hills burned bare by some ancient fire. The trees were skeletal, their branches clawing at the sky like hands reaching for forgiveness. Bram and Lyra walked in silence for hours, speaking only when necessary. Behind them, Alderwyn disappeared into morning mist and memory. They followed a forgotten trade road one, no longer marked on maps dowered the ruins of Vareth. A citadel once whispered about in frightened tones by old hunters and madmen. On the second night, they found the first marker, a stone arch carved with unfamiliar runes. When Lyra touched it, her fingers recoiled as if the stone bit her. Still warm, she muttered. Even after all this time, Bram asked, which means something passed this way. Recently, they crossed beneath it. The ruins revealed themselves at dawn-angular shadows beneath a crumbling ridge. The air grew dry and the snow thinned. It was as if the world around Vareth resisted winter itself. What remained of the citadel stood like the ribs of a fallen beast. Great towers toppled sideways, arched bridges broken in half. But at the center rose a building still intact, a dome-shaped hall of obsidian stone scarred but unyielding. This is where they kept their knowledge, Lyra whispered. The archive. They stepped inside, and Bram felt the temperature shift. Not colder, older. The air was heavy thick with the scent of burned parchment and something older, still ozone and blood. Books lay open on stone lecterns, pages blackened but legible. The writing crawled across them like veins. Lyra deciphered slowly. Look here. The gate isn't the only one. There were 7. 7 gates, Bram asked. 7 scars across the world. When the first flame shattered, it didn't disappear. It splintered into places of power, and someone tried to burn it all to keep them sealed. A sudden clang echoed through the archive. They spun. A door had opened in the back wall, revealing a figure cloaked in soot-coloured robes. He didn't speak, but held a staff carved with the same burning tree sigil they'd seen before. A firewalker, Bram hissed. No, Lyra said slowly. Something older. The figure removed his hood. His face was creased with centuries, not wrinkled but fractured, like pottery held together by glowing gold lines. I remember the truth, he said, because I helped bury it. Bram stepped forward. You were part of the first sealing. Yes, I was archivist once, before we turned against our own fire. Lyra asked, what is the purpose of the scars? They were never prisons, the man said. They were mirrors. The flame wanted us to see what we became. Bram shook his head. Then why do they cause madness? Because truth is a fire that eats. You either feed it or burn in it. He led them deeper into the archive, into a spiral chamber, carved into the mountain itself. Along its walls, carvings revealed a history long-erased men, drinking from the flame, becoming something more and less. Beings unbound by flesh. Cities falling from the sky. Children born without shadows. The archivist showed them the final mural, a man and woman standing before the last gate. They looked like Bram and Lyra. "It's not prophecy," the old man said. "It's memory." Before Bram could speak, the mountain trembled. "They've followed you," the archivist said. "Firewalkers." Explosions tore the outer halls. Lyra grabbed a tome and stuffed it into her satchel. Bram turned to help the archivist, but the old man held up a hand. "My time is ashes. Yours is not." Stone cracked above them. The archivist placed a glowing shard into Bram's palm. The 8th piece, never meant to exist, but forged in betrayal. Bram looked down. It pulsed blue and red. "Run," the man said. They did. As they burst from the archive's mouth, a wave of flame followed. The citadel collapsed behind them, smoke rising into the sky like a second dawn. Lyra gasped. "They're trying to erase the truth." Bram nodded, closing his hand around the shard. "Then we carry it." The gorge lit in waves of fire. Bram stepped forward, the shard's glow pulsing beneath his skin like a second heartbeat. The stone feather the listener had left behind clattered to the ground, vibrating violently. Valen pointed his blade at Bram. "You've been corrupted. That thing inside you, it's not truth. It's hunger." Bram's voice was steady. "Maybe hunger is all we have left when the world forgets itself." Without another word, Valen raised his hand. The firewalkers surged forward. Lyra sprang, first blade singing. Ash and flame collided in a shower of sparks. She moved like a spirit unbound, flashing through the first wave, cutting down 2 cloaked warriors before they even reacted. Bram raised his hand instinctively, and fire leapt from his palm. Not thrown, not conjured, released. It carved a clean arc through the enemy ranks. Some screamed. Others turned to ash before they hit the ground. The Ashborn at the cliff's edge remained still watching. Valen met Bram in the center of the battlefield. "You should never have taken the shard." "I didn't take it. It chose me." Their blades clashed, but Valen's blade wasn't steel, it was ember forged, humming with curse fire. Every strike sent echoes into Bram's bones, dulling his reactions. The shard tried to help, but Bram wasn't trained for war. He was trained to remember. Valen struck him down. The shard flared, catching Lyra's scream in its light. Then everything went white. He awoke in darkness. His body lay unmoving, but he saw the world from above, floating disembodied. "You're not dead," the shard whispered. "You're between." He saw the battlefield frozen. Lyra cradling his limp form. Valen standing over them, blade raised for a final blow. "You must choose," the voice said. "Fade or ignite." "What happens if I ignite?" Bram asked. "You stop being one. You become many." "What does that mean?" "It means remembering everything, every flame, every betrayal, every truth." He hesitated. "Then do it." His body convulsed. Light exploded outward from his chest, knocking Lyra and Valen back. His eyes snapped open, glowing white. He rose, but he was no longer Bram. He was the shard and Bram and the flame that remembered all. He spoke, and the fire obeyed. The battlefield erupted into an inferno. Firewalkers screamed. Ashborn sang. The canyon cracked. Valen, bleeding and burned, tried to flee, but the stone feather rose from the ground and impaled him mid-air, pinning him to the cliff wall. Bram approached. "I don't hate you," he said, "but you tried to end memory, and that is unforgivable." He turned away. Valen disintegrated. Lyra found him hours later at the base of the Heartfire. "You're still you?" she asked. He looked at his hands. "Mostly." "What now?" "We take it home. The shard, the fire, the memory, all of it. We walk back through the gate and remind the world of what it forgot." She nodded. The Ashborn knelt as they passed. Above them, the world waited, unaware that flame walked once more among the living. The world above had not changed. Not yet. Bram and Lyra emerged from the fissure 2 days after the battle. Their bodies were scorched, worn, and whispering with residual flame. The shard no longer pulsed visibly, but Bram carried the warmth beneath his skin like an ember cradled in coals. The hills that once rolled green were now veined with black streaks. where firewalker camps had scorched the earth. Small towns had vanished. Forests were pale ghosts of themselves. And in the distance, Alduin, their birthplaces, mouldered still beneath the smoke of occupation. Bram looked at the rising plumes. It started there. It should end there. Lyra frowned. The capital's fortified now. They've walled it off with ember stone. Anyone not marked gets burned before they reach the gates. We won't go through the gates, Bram said quietly. We'll go through memory. They reached the outskirts by dusk. The road was patrolled by firewalker scouts, but none recognized Bram's new form. In his presence, fire bent, torches sputtered, ember blades dulled. They passed without question. In the ruins of Alduin's eastern quarter, Bram found the house he'd once grown up in, or rather, its bone-shard beams, shattered windows, the echo of his mother's voice embedded in the stone. Lyra stood in the doorway. Is this what you wanted to find? No, Bram said. But it's where we start. He knelt in the ash and placed both hands on the earth. The shard awakened. Flame did not burst forth. It unfolded silently. The walls reformed in light, not wood. The streets flickered with images of old vendors' children running. The square where his father had told him stories. The tree under which he had said goodbye. Lyra stepped into the vision. This is memory, yes, Bram whispered. Not mine alone. This city remembers. They walked through the ghost of Alduin as it once was. Faces flickered in and out, some joyful, some weeping, some long forgotten. Then came the gate. Not the iron gate of the capital, but a doorway carved in flame leading to a place Bram had never seen, but felt. It's here, he said. The place the shard was born. Beyond this, number within. They stepped through. The world shifted. Gone was the city, the fire, the sun. They stood in a void of lightless flame, an ancient dream space woven from raw memory and pain. Floating before them was a throne of obsidian cracked down the middle. Chains of molten glass hung from the air. A figure sat upon the throne. Not Bram, not the flame, the first witness. I wondered how long it would take you to return. The figure said, voice split like layered rock. You bear the 8th shard, the shard of regret. Lyra moved closer. You're one of the original keepers. I was, before the gate opened, before memory fractured. Bram stepped forward. We came to remember, to make the world remember. The first witness looked at him with eyes of stone and storm. Then you must complete the mirror. There are 7 others, scattered, hidden, buried under blood and time. Until they reunite, the world forgets. We don't have time for a pilgrimage, Lyra snapped. The firewalkers are shadows, he said, burning brightly, fading fast. Their fire is not real. Yours is. Bram clenched his fists. Then where are the shards? The witness raised one hand. From the void, 7 lights appeared, floating in a circle. Each flame shimmered with a different color. Amber, sapphire, crimson, jade, ivory, violet, obsidian. They are hidden in those who do not know they carry them. Seek the broken, the lost, the dreamers. They are your map. Why us, Bram asked. Because you chose to remember. With a blinding pulse, the world dissolved. They woke in the ruins, coughing. But something had changed. Bram could now feel the locations of the other shards, not clearly, but like pulses in the distance, dreams in the dirt. Lyra helped him up. So now were scavenger hunters across a burning world. Bram smiled. No, we're cartographers of memory. They turned toward the rising sun. From the ash, they would rebuild fire. 3 weeks passed. The path to the first shard led them through ruins, then valleys, then into the cold basin of ardent, hollow and abandoned mining town, buried half in snow, half in whispers. The moment Bram stepped into its outskirts, the shard pulsed. Someone here holds a flame, he murmured. Lyra tightened her grip on her blade. Let's hope they're not wearing a red cloak. And the town had long been swallowed by frost. Houses leaned like drunkards against hillsides, and windows glinted with ice so thick it seemed the buildings were slowly becoming glaciers. But amidst all that stillness, the air buzzed with something unseen. They reached the central square by sundown. A tavern door creaked open by itself. "Hello," Bram called. Only silence. They entered. Inside, a fire blazed in the hearth, and in the corner a girl, no older than 13, pale eyes, silver hair. Her skin shimmered faintly like mica. She said nothing as they approached. "You're not real," Lyra said. "No," the girl answered, voice distant. "I'm remembered." The shard throbbed. Bram knelt. "You're holding something, aren't you?" "I hold nothing," the girl whispered, "but I dream it." She raised one hand and the room changed. Walls vanished. They stood on a black ocean beneath the violet sky. A single thread of silver light stretched from the girl's chest to the horizon. "They gave it to me in sleep," she said. "Told me to protect it. I've never woken since." Bram stepped forward. "What do you dream of?" She looked at him. The end of fire, the silence after flame, and you. She was a dreamer caught in a suspended mind loop by the shard of slumber. In this psychic landscape, Bram and Lyra had to navigate layers of her memory, each a trial of distorted time, guilt, and longing. In one layer, they relived her last real memory, her brother, vanishing into the mines during the Great Collapse. In another, they fought manifestations of her fear shadows that whispered her name and bled frost. With each trial, the silver thread grew brighter. At the heart of the dream, they found the shard, a teardrop of frozen light, embedded in a stone cradle. To take it, Bram had to speak her true name, buried deep beneath decades of silence. He found it in a song, half remembered from a lullaby. "Alenia." The world shuddered, the dream cracked, and the girl awoke. She gasped, real air filling her lungs for the first time in years. The tavern returned, the fire now real. Bram held the shard of slumber in his palm, cool but glowing faintly. Alenia sat up. His my brother Lyra knelt beside her. Gone, but his memory's still here. "That's enough." Alenia nodded slowly. "I want to come with you," she said. Bram looked surprised. "Why?" "Because dreams don't end, they evolve, and so do I." He offered her his hand, and the three left Ardent Hollow before sunrise. Their next lead brought them far south beyond the glass canyons of Meridian into the desolate cliffs of Ivanmore, where wind scraped the stone like whispers of judgment. There, carved into the mountainside, was a monastery so old it predated most maps. It was said to house the Oracle of Threads, and Bram Shard told him she remembers nothing. The monastery was silent. No guards, no bells. The air hung like old breath. Alenia paused at the threshold. "It's empty." "No," Lyra said. "It's watching." They entered. Inside were endless corridors, each wall adorned with string webs of twine stretched in patterns that defied geometry. Names were embroidered in the strands, most too faded to read. Bram touched one, and it whispered a life. A shepherd who watched the skies until he became them. Another a liar who died believing her own truths. Each thread was a life, and at the center of the tapestry, in a great chamber where all threads converged, sat a woman. White hair, blind eyes, motionless. "The Oracle," Bram whispered. The woman stirred. "No, I was. I am what's left." "You've forgotten?" Lyra asked. She nodded. "I gave up memory, to save it." Through fragmented words, they learned she had once held a shard of recollection. But in a final act of preservation, she had locked her own memories away into 7 statues scattered through the monastery. If they wished to restore her and find the shard, they must piece her back together. Each statue held a memory in the form of riddle and ordeal. The first was a statue of a child. Bram touched its forehead and was flung into a vision of the Oracle's first prophecy, foretelling a fire so deep it could undo death. He emerged, coughing, eyes seared. The second statue showed a battlefield. Lyra entered this vision, reliving the Oracle's choice to betray her own people to prevent a greater war. Alenia faced the third and empty cradle. She wept as she held the vision of the Oracle giving up a child to silence. 4 more visions followed, each more harrowing. By the end, the Oracle lay slumped, her eyes wet with tears that could not fall. "You've seen what I was," she whispered. but the shard is not mine now. Then who? Bram asked. She raised a trembling hand to the ceiling. High above, nestled in a golden cage woven from memory threads, floated a shard of radiant copper. It has chosen its own prison, the oracle said, because it fears the world's forgetting. Bram reached for it. The shard recoiled, until Alenia stepped forward. You don't have to be afraid, she whispered. We remember for you. The cage dissolved. The shard of recollection fell into her hands. As dawn broke, the oracle spoke her last prophecy. A fire will come that burns not just wood or flesh, but time itself. Only those who remember truth will endure. She turned to Bram. You are no longer the bearer. You are the spark keeper. And each shard you gather makes your fire less yours. I know, he said, but it's not about me. They left Ivanmore as winds howled louder than ever, but within them the memory stayed warm. They returned to where it all began, Alduin. But this time the city was not sleeping. Fires burned in towers, not of war, but of signal. People watched the horizon with dread, the whispering of flame bearers seen crossing the ash fields. The firewalkers had gathered, all of them, for the final gate. Bram stood at the edge of the altar, where he'd once bled to protect a dying boy. That boy was now the general of the firewalkers, Valen. The last shard, the one never named in old tales, was not hidden in a relic, a ruin, or a dream. It was within Valen. He had been born from the Ember Gate. They met under blackened sky. Valen wore armor that shimmered with runes burned into it. Behind him, an army of silent followers, all bearing red. You should not have come, Valen said. You knew I would, Bram replied. You still carry the shards. They carry me now. Valen looked past Bram to Alenia and Lyra. You brought them to witness, no, Bram said. I brought them to choose. The battle that followed was not of blade or fire, but of will. The shards within Bram resisted, their memories clashed with one another. Recollection twisted against slumber. Flames seared through stone. Even the shard of silence screamed. Valen raised a hand, and the world bent. He became fire, pure, formless, ancient, the true face of the gate. Bram did not fight him. He opened. Every memory the shards held flowed outward. The child in the tavern, the oracle's sacrifice, the scream in the frost, the monastery that bled time, all of it. And Valen staggered, because in each of those memories he was there. He had forgotten. He had been all of them. The boy who dreamed, the soldier who betrayed, the ember who burned. He collapsed to his knees. The shard within his chest cracked. You are not my enemy, he whispered. No, Bram said, placing a hand on his shoulder. You are my echo. And in that moment, the final shard dissolved not into Bram, but into everyone. The army behind Valen dropped their weapons. In the days that followed, Alduin saw no war, just remembrance. Lyra became a chronicler, wandering to ensure the shard's stories were never twisted by power. Alenia built a sanctuary where dreamers and the forgotten could shape a new flame. And Bram. He walked until no maps named the places he tread, carrying no flame because he had already lit the world.